I'm Rip Esselstyn, and you're listening to the Plant Strong podcast. What do you think happens when a former college athlete, biotech manager, and new mom hits a wall during the pandemic and decides to completely rewrite her story? In this powerful episode, I talk with Heidi Farina, who went from exhausted and burned out to thriving as a full-time artist, and all of this was because she embraced the power of a whole food, plant-based diet. I'm going to have Heidi's story right after this word from Plant Strong. This Mother's Day, give the gift of health to the woman who means the mostest. Whether it's a bundle of nourishing Plant Strong pantry staples and time-saving meals, or a life-changing experience at our fall retreat in glorious Black Mountain, North Carolina, there is absolutely no better way to say, I love you. Imagine spending time together in the mountains, learning, healing, and growing stronger. If that's what you're looking for, head to liveplantstrong.com. And if you're interested in our pantry staples, head to plantstrong.com and give her a gift she'll never forget. This was an email that came to me and read, as I sit here on New Year's Eve contemplating the last year of my life, I would be remiss to not acknowledge and send a giant thank you to not only you, but your whole family. 3 years ago, I started down what I like to call a reawakening journey, one that has completely turned my life upside down, reconnected me to the path that I believe I am supposed to be on, and impacted my life for the better in every way. This is how the email from my guest today, Heidi Farina, started, and her deeply personal and transformative story is going to leave you inspired to reconnect with your own health and purpose. Once a Division I college athlete turned biotech professional and new mom, Heidi found herself overwhelmed, exhausted, and facing the reality of her family's health history. After the tragic loss of her mother and grandfather to preventable conditions, Heidi began to reevaluate everything from her career to her daily habits. What followed was nothing short of a reawakening that she shares with me today. Please welcome Heidi Farina. Heidi Farina, welcome to the Plant Strong podcast. You are a native Clevelander, and so I already like you.
That's that Midwest spirit. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And you're not in Cleveland right now. Where are you talking to me from?
So I'm in Seattle. We've been in Seattle for 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually haven't lived in Cleveland area probably about 18 years now. So we progressively moved west. We went from Cleveland to Wyoming to California, and then California up to Seattle.
So let's talk for a second about Cleveland. So
yeah,
I think you said you grew up in Twinsburg area.
I did.
If I'm not mistaken.
You're in Twinsburg?
It's just a skip and a jump. Like we had a place in the kind of the Cleveland Shaker Heights area. Mm-hmm. But then we also had a kind of a weekend place out in Mentor.
Oh,
sometimes we would go through Twinsburg. But what are some of your fond memories of Cleveland? Like, what did you love about Cleveland?
Yeah, Cleveland had some cool stuff. So highly underrated art museum, highly underrated art museum. They have a really good arts and culture there, which I think a lot of people don't think about when they think about Cleveland. This is silly, but things I miss a lot are things that I don't get out here anymore. So cardinals, lightning bugs. I don't miss the humidity. And I think things like that, like little things about living in Ohio that we don't get out here and haven't had in any of the Western states, really. So really it's like lightning bugs, cardinals, that like frog noise when you go to bed.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff is things I definitely miss. So.
Yeah. I will always adore and love Cleveland. It will always have soft spot in my heart.
Absolutely. Do
And
you
I
miss
love,
anything or no?
oh, well, yeah, obviously I miss the seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I miss the snow. I miss downtown Cleveland and all the great things there. Playhouse Square, the Art Museum, the Museum of Natural History.
Yes.
You know, the culture in Cleveland is very deep and very rich.
Yes.
Truly. You know, I miss the Cavs, the Browns, the Indians.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not the Indians anymore. It's the Guardians, I think.
Guardians. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. All that. All that.
Ohio State. No. My whole family's like Ohio State diehard fans. So we
Yeah. But we're not here to talk so much about Cleveland as we are about an email that you wrote to me on New Year's Eve of this year, where you were basically contemplating the last year of your life. And it was a really profound email. It was super, you know, I can't tell you how much I love getting emails like yours, but it meant a lot to you. What's transpired over the last year. Otherwise, you wouldn't have sat down on New Year's Eve to write this wonderful email. So I want to talk about and as you coined it in your email to me, your reawakening.
Yeah.
That happened roughly 3 years ago, which you say it has impacted your life for the better in every way imaginable. So let's start. I think you say that there were 2 deaths that happened in your life that kind of to this day still haunt you.
Yeah. One of them I wasn't around for, but it haunts me anyways. My grandpa, who I didn't meet, because my mom had me, I'm the 5th kid out of 5 kids, and she had me when she was 36. So my grandpa died before I was born of a heart attack. And I have more details around the health situation now. But basically, all I had known growing up was that he died of a heart attack. He went to the hospital. They thought it was okay and he was going to make it. And then 12 hours later, he died.
Mm.
And so that was a really traumatic, I think, for my mom. She definitely talked about it to me. But then when I was 19, my husband and I got married really young. We got married at 19 and 20. And we moved immediately to Wyoming when that happened, when we got married. And she passed from a hemorrhagic stroke at 54 while that first year we were in Wyoming, which was super traumatic for me. I definitely went through a pretty rough patch in life in general around that. But, it was one of those things. I was so young that I kind of didn't think about my own health. I just thought about oh gosh, my mom has passed really young. She was really instrumental in my life. She's a stay-at-home mom with me. So it was hard, but I didn't think about the health ramifications or what it meant that my grandpa had died young and that my mom had died young. And so, that's kind of why when I did start realizing my health was slipping, that I started kind of digging into the health line of my family a little bit. I started asking relatives who knew my mom and dad and my grandpa and other people that were no longer in the family, what was going on. And what I think I've deduced between myself and them is that I think what the major caveat in my family is, the major hurdle is actually diabetes, I'm pretty sure. So my grandpa, I didn't realize this, but he had some form of diabetes 10 years before he died of the heart attack. And my aunt thinks he wasn't going to the most cutting edge doctor, et cetera. And then he had that heart attack. And then my mom, she actually got, I don't know if it was preeclampsia, but we know it was gestational hypertension with me. Mm-hmm. And she refused to take the blood pressure medication after I was born because she got it right after she delivered me. And she refused to take the blood pressure medicine. But I grew up in this big Hungarian ethnic family that all we ate was meat and potatoes, chicken paprikash, every week. It was always pot roast, beef stew, chicken paprikash on, white flour dumplings that were homemade. Everything was bacon, it was just really heavy food. And so she wouldn't take the medicine and then never changed her diet. And she had 5 kids and she was stressed and all those things. So her health just spiraled, but she wouldn't go to the doctor. So we didn't really know what was going on with her. And so the hemorrhagic stroke, in retrospect, I'm yeah, that makes sense. She probably had diabetes. She probably had heart disease. She probably had all kinds of things that added to that. But because she didn't take care of herself, to be honest. Like because of that, I don't really know what happened, but it's a domino effect of all of the health choices kind of piling. And then, I genetically tested myself because that's my background is genetics. And I have like a 43% increased probability of diabetes over the normal population. And so I was like, we must as a family have this, propensity for diabetes, but also as we know, as you and I know, you can control those things with lifestyle, right?
Right.
And that's the part that for me really started hitting home when I started looking into it is like, oh my gosh, we don't have to be beholden to our family history, right? Like make choices that have a giant impact on your life, regardless of what you were born with genetically.
Yeah, no, completely. Yeah, you mentioned diabetes, and we know that diabetes will increase your likelihood of heart disease almost tenfold.
Yeah.
So that's no surprise there with your grandpa, and then your mother. I'm sorry to hear about that because I just can't even imagine, at the age of 19, 20, losing your mother. How difficult that must have been.
It was hard.
And you mentioned being, kind of Hungarian roots and all the different meat and potato dishes. And we were talking earlier before we went live about how Cleveland actually has one of the largest populations of Hungarians next to actually, Hungary. And I think it's because of an influx of Hungarians that came in after a revolution that happened in Hungary in 1956, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my family came a little bit earlier, but I'm Hungarian on both sides. So they came over at different times, essentially. I'm not 100%, but I'm like 80% Hungarian, essentially. So
yeah. Well, one of the things that I learned, because I dated a Hungarian woman for 3 years over there, is never get in the way of a Hungarian and their food.
It's accurate. It's accurate, man. I actually this changing my food. I didn't realize how addicted I was to food. That's the biggest thing I learned from all this. I was like, wow, I really was addicted. Like, even though I ate fairly okay, I was addicted to food before this.
Well, I think I think we're all addicted to food. It's just a matter of, is it nourishing food?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
or is it destructive food, right?
Like now I crave mangoes, which is great.
Awesome. Have you ever met Cyrus Kambata?
No, but I listened to your podcast with him.
Okay. Because his nickname is Mango Man, because he just, oh God, he can eat 20 mangoes a day.
They're so awesome. They're the best fruit. They're so good.
Yeah. Totally agree. You mentioned that you took a genetic test. And that, genetics was your specialty in the biotech world.
Yeah.
What do you have any recommendation for those of us that have never done any genetic testing? Is there a certain brand that you would recommend, or?
Oh, gosh, I mean, it's so good now. Yeah. It's so good now. Like when I was in college, genetics was nowhere near. Like when I started, we were doing PCR, which has been around for a long time, but sequencing now is incredibly cheap. Whereas when I started in college and was doing research in the beginning of my research career, it was not incredibly cheap. So like 10 years ago, I would have said, go to your doctor and make sure that you ask them to get the test done by like a diagnostic lab, but now if you want, you can even go through like 23andMe and they have full health panels that will give you just an overview. Mm-hmm. And the thing is that I think is important to think about with genetics is that there's genetics and there's epigenetics, and genetics is what you're born with. And then epigenetics is what you turn on in your genes. And I think it's really important that people, like, if they do these tests, they don't take it as like a death sentence. Right. Like, it's really easy. When I saw those results, it's really easy to go down that rabbit hole of like, oh my God, I'm going to get diabetes. Right. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, a lot of the things that are potentially going to be a chronic disease you have control over, I believe a certain amount of control over. And so those tests, I would say it would be better if you went and actually checked your A1C, right? Like go to the doctor and get your A1C testing. Mm-hmm. If you want to know if your genetic background, because I'm just curious like that, I wanted to know. But the thing I really wanted to test when I started this diet change is I went to Quest and I booked my own tests and I just pulled the data every like 3 to 4 months to see what my own body was doing.
Huh.
And so I didn't go to the doctor. I just tracked it myself and said, okay, what's my A1C at? What is my lipid profile at? I used all of those normal test factors that they do in the doctor, and I just got them done myself through Quest.
Huh. Nice.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if everyone would want to do that. My background's medical genetics. So I felt very comfortable doing that.
Well, you should start a side hustle helping people do that. But you know what you said is very interesting, because obviously genetics is kind of just the hand that you were dealt, right, at birth because of your mother and your father. And then epigenetics is kind of what you can change, what you can kind of alter, I think, through diet and lifestyle and other factors. And the cool thing is like, we know from the work of Dr. Dean Ornish that you can actually turn on cancer promoting genes and turn on cancer fighting genes. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
Just by changing what you're feeding your 20 trillion cells, right?
I mean, mushrooms go in like every meal. Like, like I'm like, we're putting mushrooms at every single meal because it's anti-cancer.
Yeah. Well, that's really smart. All right, so let's get back to your story. You mentioned how in your email to me how you kind of always were a very fit athlete.
Yeah.
And so, can you tell us a little bit about your athletic background?
Yeah, like there is not a day in my life that I don't remember being an intense athlete. Like it has been, my parents like groomed me into it. So they started me ice skating when I was 18 months. I was a competitive figure skater, not like uber competitive, but like, went through lessons, learned all the jumps, did a few competitions. Always super, super athletic in that way. And then when I hit high school, I switched into running because I just loved running. And I went to cross country and track, and I did snowboarding, and I actually met my husband snowboarding in high school. And so, I mean, my whole life up into high school was athletics and big into it. I was in the kind of my family was very rigidly strict, not in a bad way, but they were like, if you got a B, you got in trouble. If you got a C, you got kicked off your sport. You had to get your grades back up to get back in the sport. So basically they knew we were all athletically inclined, and then they motivated grades with it. But the thing is that after high school, I went into college running. Then after college running, I went into like ultra running. And then at a certain point, I turned that into triathlons.
Yeah.
And then the triathlons morphed into going back to ice skating. And I ended up doing a hockey course with my husband. And now we play ice hockey. I play like 2 to 3 times a week, and he plays like 7 to 10 times a week.
Oh, wow.
So it's a huge part of my life. Like there's almost never a day where I'm not doing something highly active. And that's just like the sports. Like I hike mountains, I kayak, like I snowboard a lot. Like it's just a huge, huge part of my life.
Wow. Heidi gets after it.
Yeah, I love it.
It's funny. You mentioned ice skating. This last Christmas, our family, we went to the North Shore of Lake Superior, and we found a little lake, a little frozen lake, little inland, and we rented some skates, and we all went skating, and we were probably out there for 2 hours, just kind of skating around. And I couldn't believe it was such a cold day, but I couldn't believe how warm I got after about 5-10 minutes of skating around. It's a workout.
It is a workout. It's great. And it's fun too. Like you don't really notice until you're done. You're like, oh, I'm actually tired. That was a good time.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about, so 3 years ago, you wrote to me and said that you were about 33 years old. You were living in Seattle. You had just had your baby daughter, and you were in your biotech job, and you were absolutely exhausted. So explain to me, what did that exhaustion look like and feel like?
I was drowning. I didn't even realize I was drowning until I blew it all up. Yeah. So, and so it's multi-factor. So I had a baby, which in itself is exhausting, right? Like having a baby, growing a baby, not sleeping from that baby. That was all happening. And then when I went back to work, and I took a long maternity leave, but I went back to work around 6 months postpartum. Um, and so what would happen is I'd wake up with the baby in the middle of the night, feed her, go back to bed. I'd be up by 6:30 on my email, doing emails. Then work calls usually start around 8 a.m. They'd go until 5, and I managed 8 people. So it wasn't like the kind of job where I could just shut it off at 5. If someone had to call me or email me, I had to be there. I had to be doing something for them. Which was great pre-baby. I didn't mind that at all pre-baby, but post-baby, I was like, I actually am exhausted and I just need to nap or go for a walk or something. So it'd be like 5 p.m. and then I would hang out with my kid as much as I could in that time gap before she went to bed, which at that time newborn, so it was like 10 p.m. But that would be 10 p.m. And then at the same time, I was getting reinvested into painting and my art. I was already kind of starting to develop an art business. And so from like 10 to 1:30 in the morning, I would paint, partly for like mental health of like, I need to do something for me. And partly because I really just felt super connected back to art again. And so it was this like cycle of me getting like 6 hours of sleep max and putting everybody above myself, except for that one period at the end of the night, right? Like it was like, wake up baby, wake up work, back to baby, and then maybe a couple hours to paint. I was dying. I was really tired. I didn't want to go like that's when I knew something was wrong. I didn't want to go work out, which has never been an issue in my life. Like I've always been the person that like was jonesing to go work out and I just couldn't get myself off the couch. We were ordering takeout a lot, which is awful for you in a lot of ways. And then little things started creeping up. Like I would wake up and my feet would be sore in a way that I'd never had soreness, or I'd get tingling in my fingertips. And I was like, something's off. Like I'm not good right now, you know?
Yeah, no. So it sounds like you had a lot of red flags.
Yeah.
They were popping up saying, Heidi,
Yep.
you need to make some adjustments here, girl. And you also in your email mentioned that you're 5 feet tall.
Yep.
And that at this point in your life after the baby, you were about 45 pounds overweight?
Yeah. It's interesting too, because pregnancy, I gained about 30 pounds, but I actually lost most of it after I had the baby. Like a lot of it, I think, was water weight because I was back down to like 10 pounds from my normal weight. But the problem was I was so exhausted and so stressed once I went back to work that's when it started piling on. And I was like, oh my God, this isn't baby weight. This is like life weight and stress and unhealthy choice weight. So yeah, I'm 5 foot and I was like 175, which weirdly, I don't think I looked awful because I think I'm muscular, so I think it hid okay, but I felt awful. I felt really awful. So.
Well, and so that leads me to one of the things that I love about your personal journey is how you had the courage to kind of take a hard look at your life and where you were and the fact that, okay, Heidi, you're drowning. This isn't sustainable. We got to make a pivot. And it sounds like it wasn't a like abrupt pivot, but like you just mentioned, one of the things you did to keep from drowning, to basically cast yourself a lifebuoy, was you went back to a passion that you had from your early days, which is painting. So tell me, I want to hear, because I think this is such an important part of your story. What was it, or is it about painting that grounded you and gave you that, allowed you to have that self-reflection?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. So I was an artist, like same way that I figure skated from very early. My earliest memories of life were making art, like very vivid memories of making art as a little kid. And I majored in it when I started in college. That's what I majored in. But I grew up in a pretty poor family, and all I could think about while I was majoring in it was like, how do you make a career on art? And I didn't want to live in New York City, and I was like, what do I do? Right. I live in Wyoming. It's like, can I even make money on this? And so that's when I switched away from art into science, because I also loved science. And so I just wanted to switch into that to like get a career path. But the art has always been a giant passion. So basically when I was painting at home what happened is actually the painting started around COVID. So when the world shut down, my job went gangbusters because we made the diagnostic systems for COVID. And so basically I was working like, while everybody else was working from home, I was out in the field in Seattle at the labs that were finding the COVID outbreaks. We were training them on how to run the systems. I was like very, very much involved in the first responder type group. And so we couldn't travel anymore, but we were also doing these like crazy intense work related things due to COVID. And so I was like, oh, I want to start painting again just for me now that we're not traveling as much, because I have to go out in the field and see people in Seattle, but I can actually not be on an airplane as much. So I started painting again around COVID. And that turned into like a watercolor painting just for fun. And then morphed into me getting back into the mediums that I used to do, which is oil and acrylic. And I just realized how much it shut my brain off. Like I could sit there and 3 hours would disappear and I felt awesome and I loved what I was doing. And I opened up this whole side of me that I kind of forgot I had. So it was really powerful to remember like, oh yeah, I'm not just like an automated worker bee. I'm not just
and what
person that's here doing stuff for everybody else. Right.
and what side do you feel like it opened up? What side of you? Like this creative side that you kind of had shut down, or
creative, spiritual, all of it. I'm not really, I grew up in a very religious family and I'm not very religious, but I am what I would call spiritual. And I think it opened up like this, like self-love, like this need to do something I really loved that was purely for me. It was purely selfish, which a lot of my life has not been purely selfish. And so, yeah, it kind of felt good to lean into that, as much as that sounds weird. But it was also like that connection point to nature. Like when I switched into science, I actually majored in zoology genetics and I was working in wildlife ecology first before it switched into medical genetics, because that's what I loved most, was like being out in the mountains and being out. Like, that's why we live in the Western states, was I love mountains, I love ocean, I love the ecology that goes with that. So it was this combo pack of like, I can be in the places I love, I can paint them, I can sit and observe them, I can just feel my life. I don't know, I can feel all of life doing this, whereas the rest of my life was like sitting in front of a computer looking at data, you know?
Yeah. Well, so now I love all that. And so what happened in November of 2022? You got the courage to have a certain conversation with your husband, right?
Yeah. I think he was a little bit blown away.
He didn't see it coming?
Not in the way that I know. So I mean, I'd been in biotech for like 10 years. And before that, I'd been a scientist in academia. And I'm just really frank, like I made a good salary, you know, and we live in an expensive place. And so, I mean, he knew that I was starting to paint a lot, and then I was like getting people people were interested in buying it, but I don't think he realized how serious I was about quitting my job for it. And so I kind of mentioned it, and like, he'd be like, yeah, haha. Like I don't know. It wasn't that he was like dismissing of it, but he wasn't necessarily thinking I was serious.
But let me ask you this before you continue. But did your husband not see, or
no, he did. He totally did.
Did he not read the room that you were drowning and you were not enjoying what was going on?
No, he did. He knew that part. I mean, we had multiple conversations about like, what do we do to make this more bearable? Because and it's hard because we live very far away from family. So, you know, we don't have this like giant support network when we have when we have Isla, and if we have more kids, like we can't just pick up a phone and call someone and say, hey, come over. I'm drowning. Right. So he knew that. And he's been awesome about being like, hey, I'm going to take her for 2 hours. You go play hockey. But I don't think he realized like how much I was drowning in the job front. Like, and to be honest, I wasn't really vocalizing that to most people. Like, I loved my job pre-kid. So it was a really hard decision to give it up, because I had invested years in what I did, and I had gotten pretty high in the company, and like there was a lot to give up, you know? So it was a scary idea. So I don't even think I vocalized it 100%, because I was like, am I going to do this? Like, this is crazy. Like,
So, okay. So you had this conversation with your husband about, hey, what do you think if I paint full time, right?
Yeah. So I had sold a little bit of artwork just from painting at night and like putting it on Instagram. And I basically tracked those numbers. And I was like, if I can do this full time, like I know me, then I can extrapolate this. And how much would that be? And so I basically went to him with like a business plan. And I was like, here's what I've done so far. Here's what I think I can do. It's a really big risk. Do you trust me? And, the first conversation, he was like, okay, I hear you. I'm not sure this is a perfect idea, but I hear you. And then I kind of had repeating conversations. And by about 3 or 4 months in, he was like, okay, just do it.
Yeah. You're wearing me down. Sure.
Yeah, a little bit.
Let's be done with it. So now let me ask you this. So you decide you're going to lean into it full time.
Yeah.
So you're not really leaning into it. You're jumping in, right? What did the people at your work think? Were they like,
everyone was like,
you've got a job when you want to come back in 3 months?
Kind of less direct, because it was interesting. A lot of people were like highly supportive, but there was all these like side questions where you're like, you think I'm nuts. So it'd be like, oh, tell me about that. How do you make money on art? Or how do you sell art? Or I didn't know you could make money on it. Like just a lot of those kind of questions. So it might have been curiosity, but I think a lot of people thought I was taken off to be a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
Which I get. I totally get. Like it's a weird pivot to hear someone's moving from like full-blown hardcore science to painting.
So no, totally. So let's talk about, you're jumping like full force into your passion.
Yep.
You're raising your daughter, and as you told me in your email, so you can witness all the milestones. Absolutely. Right? You don't want to miss those. And then you also wanted to, lastly, you want to focus on your health.
Yes.
And so you resigned from your biotech career, January of 2023. And then tell me at first, how did the painting go? What happened with this new burgeoning career?
So, I mean, a couple of things. It was awesome right off the bat because we didn't have to have a nanny anymore. And so I got hours with my kid back, right? I was with her for every moment of the day, which was amazing, is amazing. I'm still doing that. But then I would paint in her nap time, which I'm very lucky in that my kid has always been an excellent napper. She's also an athlete. She's hardcore. She's as bad as my husband and I. She's super wild. And so so when she sleeps hard. And so she'd sleep for 4 hours. And so basically I would wake up, take care of her. We'd go do a lot of fun things for the day. And then at 2 p.m. clockwork, I'd get from 2 to 6 to paint.
Yeah.
My husband, when he was done with his job, he usually gets done with his job around 4:35. He would take over if she was up. But I basically turned it into 20 to 30 hours a week in nap times and weekends. And then just kept painting. And so I would build collections and launch them on Instagram and tell people I was releasing them. And I expected that I would be able to make okay money on it, but it actually took off. I was selling out collections within 3 months of starting. And it was awesome. It was awesome and unexpected, and also a little bit bad because I didn't focus on my health. That was the whole year that I was supposed to be at home, take care of my health. And instead I was screw it, I'm going to work.
Tell me that first year, were you able to make as much as you were in your biotech career?
It was close. It wasn't exactly the same as what I was making in my last role, but I was making this. I made my first year full-time art. I made the same amount that I'd made in biotech in years previous.
Fantastic. Okay.
Crazy.
Okay. But so again, but the one thing that you weren't focusing on was your health.
Was me. Yeah. Again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happened?
Yeah. I have an addictive personality, right? I get sucked into whatever I really want to do, which is usually sports, my kid, or painting. And I was like, oh, I'll clean up my diet. I knew my diet wasn't great. It wasn't awful, but it wasn't great. I knew that, but I was like, I'll get to it. And I just kept putting it off. And then I'm not even sure what triggered. I think it was just I was a year into the art And
I know what it was.
yeah, it was the snowboarding.
You went on a snowboard trip.
Yeah, I was like, what was it? It was, yeah, because there was a few things, like none of my clothes fit. I couldn't get into any of my old clothes, which was really ticking me off because I'm cheap and I didn't want to rebuy clothes. And so I was really mad about that. But then I was snowboarding and my button popped open on my pants while I like did a jump. And then I had to like tie it with a hairband. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm not pregnant anymore. What am I doing? But it was a combo pack. Like the frustration over the weight had been brewing even before that moment because I knew that none of my clothes were fitting and I was refusing out of like pure stubbornness to buy new clothes. So I was like, I look awful. Like,
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like 2024. Well, let me back up for a sec. So I know what happened is, so after that snowboarding trip, you were really frustrated and you said you went and visited a dietitian and you had this aha moment.
I did.
So what happened?
I forgot I wrote this much to you. I should have reread that email. So there's a dietitian because I'm on Instagram a lot for my job, right? So there's a dietitian that kept showing up on my feed and she's in California. And so I basically, it was not cheap, but not ridiculous. And I was like, you know what? I don't have a ton of bandwidth. Like let somebody tell me how to do my diet and maybe I'll get this fixed. And it's complicated because I've had a lot of roller coasters with how I've eaten in the past, not like in a not in a food what's the right word?
Disorder?
Yeah, not in a disordered way, just more like maybe it is. I don't know. It just in a way of like, I would always kind of be following nutrition stuff and like it always changes online what people are talking about. And so I would be like, oh, let's try this, sometimes with really poor choices. And so I called her, we got on a call. She went through my diet. We had like 2 calls. And one of the questions she asked, there were 2 things. So one of the questions she asked me was, when did I feel best and at my best weight and best health? And I went back to college when after my mom had died, I had watched Forks Over Knives because it came out like right after she passed. And there's a whole slew of documentaries that were like vegetarian, vegan at that time. And so I'd watched a few of them and I was a little bit like, oh, this checks out. There's a lot of science behind it. I'm going to try it. And I actually have never loved meat. When I was about 8, I asked my mom if I could be a vegetarian. And she was like, no, but if I thought hard enough about it, maybe. But like didn't really give me any weight to it. But I had enough interest in it even back then that I was like thinking about that just from the animal side, I think. But then in college, I felt compelled from these documentaries to try it. And so I went vegetarian for like 6 years. In that time period, I was not vegan, but I was vegetarian. I was mostly whole foods. And I was running 6 miles every day, like felt awesome, doing sprint workouts. I remember my energy just being really good. And then I slowly fell off because out of habit, my family had grown up eating a ton of meat. And so when I'd be like, oh, I really want stuffed cabbage rolls. And I'd be like, oh, I guess I could have beef today. Like it would just kind of slowly creep back in when I was not being vegetarian anymore. So her asking me that question kind of jogged me back to that. And then I immediately went and got your dad's book, Preventing Heart Disease, I think is the one.
Prevent Reverse Heart Disease. Yeah.
Yes. Because all of a sudden in my head, like I can't fit in my clothes. I just had a kid. I'm in my mid 30s. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it's just because I was painting a lot and my kid was little, but I was like, man, like, I don't want to die at 60, like I have zero desire to be not in her life. So sorry, got a little teary there.
It's good.
So I basically like, it was an eye-opening moment of like, I'm going to read these books because I clearly watched the documentaries and I've forgotten about them. And for whatever reason, this second time around, when I read everything in a book format, I was like, whoa, this, why didn't I put the pieces together? Like, it's not just vegetarian. It's like full-blown whole foods, no dairy, like none of the things that have historically not done well with me anyways, and it was just so eye-opening. So I immediately started kind of twisting my diet. Like, I basically that day that I finished the book, I went through and just threw out the food in the house and stopped cold turkey. Minus oil snuck in there a little bit, but everything else was gone. And I was writing this down in my food diary. And so the second call with the dietitian, she was like, asking about some days before I'd stopped eating my traditional way, and then asking about the days after I'd started eating more vegan, right? And she was basically like, you got to cut out the lentils. These aren't good for you.
Mm.
You know, you should do these turkey meatballs. You should do that more and cut out the lentils. Be careful with chia seeds. The fat in those can really mess with people. And I was like, man, I've read enough scientific literature to know that that's not true. Like PubMed publications do not at all back that up. And so I kind of lost trust in what she was saying after that second call. And then I was like, forget it, we're going all in. And that's when I read all the books and listened to all the podcasts. And I probably spent hundreds of hours in the car driving, listening to podcasts of you and other people, just like revamping my mind. And the more I did that, the more I would then look up literature. And I was like, this all checks out. Like there's everything points to humans across the world generally respond better to this. I need to pursue it.
So you took this reborn passion for whole food, plant-based, wanting to be around for decades and decades, to paint, to be with your husband, to be with your daughter. And you basically said, you put it all on the line saying 2024 is going to be the year of balance for me. And you figured it out, right?
Yeah. I pulled back on the art a little bit, and you wouldn't be able to tell, like I was still launching the same amount of work, but what I did was I went slower. Like I would still paint the same amount, but I was like, you know what, if an Instagram post doesn't happen every single day, that's okay. If I let go of some of the other things like the social media, I'm not saying let go of it altogether because it's a big part of it, but I was like, that can taper off a little bit. I was like, also, I have a tendency to, like, I always take my daughter and do fun stuff. Like I want her life to be very enriched. So like we go to the zoo, we go ice skating, we go to the pool, like we do something almost every day, which is great. But I was also like, I need to make sure that I get an hour at the gym and also 40 minutes a day to cook. Like these are things that are just like, we don't need to be doing takeout as much. And so 2024, where I had kind of taken the art and kind of put it in place of the biotech and just supplemented workaholism for more workaholism, 2024 became like, you know what, it's still important to me and I need to run this as a business, but I also need to remember why I did all of this, which was to have a life that was more balanced and to be a better parent and to be around a long time and to be healthy for everybody and to see my husband more, all of those things. So 2024 was it for that.
How wonderful. And what happened as far as your health? What happened with your weight, blood pressure, working out, all that stuff?
Yeah. So I got the test. I got the original test through Quest. It was Quest, I think. But basically I got lipid profile, a bunch of nutrient panels, and then I didn't get A1C at that time. So I actually wish I would have because I want that data. But I tested that first. And none of it was awful, but none of it was great. My LDL was slightly elevated. And then I switched the diet over. Within a week, I'd gotten that test and switched the diet over completely. And then I was like, okay, I need to give this a few weeks to see how it goes. And the first test back, I dropped from like 110 LDL down to 80. Yeah. Somewhere around there. I have to look at the exact numbers, but it was a substantial jump down.
Completely expected and normal. 30 points in your LDL. Yeah.
And my blood pressure had been for the past couple of years post-pregnancy, and I think this was because of weight, but I don't know, is my blood pressure was like the hypertension's kind of been changing in the medical world, right? Like it used to be that 120 over 80 was good, but now it's like pre-hypertension. And so I'd always been around 120 over 80, but then it started creeping up to like 130 over 82. And I was just like, this is the wrong trajectory with a family who's got hemorrhagic strokes that happen young or did happen to my mom. I was like, this is not good. And so my blood pressure went down to like immediately like 110 over 70. And nowadays it's like 108 over 65. And I'm guessing it'll go down further over time, right? Because if you keep following the diet, hopefully it does. But
That's
But
pretty
I'm
good.
very happy with where I'm at now.
It may not go much lower than that, but listen, 108 over 65 is like pristine,
Yeah.
gorgeous.
Yeah. And even like it was weird because I track everything on my watch and my heart rate. Like I was like, wow, my heart rate had dropped a ton because I've always been an athlete. And so it was very clear that like either the salt and the diet were picking up
Mhm.
my heart rate too.
Nice.
So
And you also mentioned how you were able to skate hard without getting winded again, which felt amazing. You were doing these like sprint workouts again, running, and you were doing times back like when you were a college athlete.
yeah, it was insane. Like so many things switched over. Like hockey I'd always been a really like a try hard at hockey scenario, but like I didn't realize how much I was gassed until I changed the diet. I was like, oh, I can breathe like really easily while going fast. And the running, like, yeah, I used to run in high school. I ran a 5:15 mile.
Nice.
Yeah. And in college, like my average is around 7 minutes per mile for a 3K or a 5K, 3 miles.
Yeah.
And I was back down to like a 7, like in the past year, I've been back down to a 7:30, if not lower. I've gotten down to 7 at some point.
Yeah.
But like I can do a sprint again, and I was like, that hasn't happened in years. I haven't done a mile that fast in years.
Yeah. And what happened to your weight over the last year?
Yeah. So I dropped. So the minute I changed, so that's what's so interesting too. So the exercises stayed the same for all these years, right? Even though I didn't feel as good, I was exercising the same. But the minute I changed the diet, it melted off. Like it went from, kind of dropping steadily for me making slightly better choices. Like I would lose a couple here, 5 here.
Mhm.
To I had to have lost 20 in a 2-month period. It was crazy. It was super quick.
Yeah.
And so just everything melted off the minute the diet changes happened. And yeah, I was shocked. Like it felt like 6 months had gone by and I'd dropped I dropped like 40 pounds.
And are you at your fighting weight right now?
So I'm a little bit heavier right now because of Christmas. Winter weight. No, I went up a little bit, but I'm still within like 5 pounds of where I was. So.
That's great. That's great. Way to be. Tell me, for all the listeners, like I'm sure they're wondering, like, so Heidi, like, what does a typical day of breakfast, lunch, and dinner look like in your household?
Yeah. So breakfast is almost always oatmeal. It's actually funny. My husband does this diet mostly with me now, and he's always like, maybe something other than oatmeal.
But do you do rolled oats? Do you do steel cuts? You do
a little bit of both. I really love. I don't know if I got this from your mom, but I have done this way before I started listening to your podcast. So I don't know if it came from like a recipe your mom had out in the world, but I really like the steel cut oats with like turmeric and veggies in it, like at the savory. It reminds me of kongi. Like I like that savory spicy. So I do that a good amount with steel cut oats. And then kind of our quick go-to is oatmeal with like frozen berries in the winter or fresh in the summer. And it'll be like some kind of alternative milk, usually like yours that you make for Plant Strong or soy milk. And then we'll do like ground flaxseed, hemp, chia. In fact, my husband at one point, this is kind of funny. He's going to kill me for sharing this, but he was like, whatever is making me poop more, could you stop with that? But I was like, no, you're supposed to be. We're adding more flax.
No, that's good. We're cleaning out your colon, man. This is a good thing.
He was like, it was like a good month conversation where he's like, I don't know about this. So there's that. And then usually I do a big salad for lunch. It's almost always like a huge salad with like cucumber, artichokes, olives, balsamic, all that stuff your dad talks about for like that things. And like,
do you do a dressing on it, or is it just the balsamic vinegar?
The aged balsamic, it's really thick, like it's sweet. Oil. We do not do oil generally in the house. Like we have it, but I would say 99% of the time we don't use it. Yeah. I will say like when we're traveling or when we're like, it's just hard, in reality when you're out and about to completely avoid everything. And so when we're out and about, like oil does happen on salads and stuff like that, or, occasionally a fry. But yeah, at home it's balsamic, aged. You can get like, what's it called? There's a California brand out on the West Coast that's really good. It's called Grand Reserve, and it's really great. And it's at like every grocery store.
Nice. What about dinner?
Yeah, dinner. I actually really love cooking. Like I used to be all about cooking. And so I really love, we'll do Cuban black bean tacos with like homemade guac and mango salsa and other good salsas. I do that a lot. We'll do like ratatouille. We'll do a lot of like vegetable heavy dishes at night, like less of like the beans and the carbs and more of well, they're all carbs, but anyways, it's more like either bean tacos or it'll be like a portobello stir fry or something like that. There's a lot of stir fries and things like that. So.
Yeah. What about dessert? You guys ever do desserts?
Yeah. So, man, this is the thing, man. Like you think back to your childhood. My mom, so funny. She made a dessert every single day when I got home from school. Every day. And now looking back, I'm like, no wonder we had health issues. Like, yeah. So I'm careful about it because I tend to really want to eat sweets if I start eating them. If I don't eat them a lot, then I stay away from them. So what I do is I'll do things like dates with peanut butter and chocolate. Yeah. Like things that are kind of hitting that sweet spot, but without as much crap in them.
Yeah. You just got to, but with the dates and the peanut butter and the chocolate, you got to call it 2 or 3. You can't go to 5, 6.
Yeah. We make them, we freeze them, and then I'll pull out like 2 and have it with coffee or something. But,
well, listen, it was my birthday just a couple of days ago. And instead of having we have this amazing place called Mr. Natural, and they have the best vegan birthday cakes. But I was like, no, I don't want a vegan birthday cake. Instead, my youngest daughter, Hope, who's 10, she makes the best pitted dates with chocolate and with peanut butter inside, and then enrobed in, chocolate, dark chocolate. And then she freezes them. And so that's what I had. I had like a date peanut butter chocolate cake that she just piled up. It was awesome.
That's awesome. I mean, it tastes like Snickers. It really does. Like dates are underrated. Super.
Totally. Yeah.
The other thing is my mom always made apple crisp, which I love, but she made it like full butter, tons of brown sugar in it. So we've moved to making apple crisp, but we'll do it with date syrup. And I will use a little bit of vegan butter, like the cashew butter. You can find the Miyoko's. I'll use that. Yeah. It gets like a very similar taste to the apple crisp. That's like for holidays though. We make that like on Thanksgiving or Christmas.
Yeah. All right. Wonderful. Before we sign off, Heidi, I really want you to tell me a little bit more about your artwork. And like, do you do landscapes? What's your jam with painting?
So I mentioned this a little bit. I feel like we've talked about a lot. My husband and I met snowboarding, and we live 5 minutes from the ocean in Seattle. Like we're 5 minutes from where orca whales swim. And so like I love, like my favorite thing in the whole world outside of my sports addiction is just like walking on the beach and seeing whales pop up, or going to the mountains and snowboarding with my husband or other people. And so, I paint those places. Like I paint the places that I go for walks. I paint the places that I go snowboarding. I paint the places that you drive through to get to hockey tournaments in Eastern Washington. So that's what I do. I love it. Like I absolutely love this state. I don't think we'll ever leave the Pacific Northwest unless we have to. And I love painting it. So that's what I focus on.
So if people that are listening are interested in your artwork, where's the best place for them to go to check it out and then potentially purchase something from you?
Yeah. There's not a lot on there right now, but there will be. There is Instagram. I think she has it up on the screen. It's Heidi Farina Art. And then I also have Threads and Blue Sky, and both of those are also Heidi Farina Art. And then my website, which is HeidiFarinaFineArt.com. So, but I like Instagram's where I spend most of my time.
You signed off your email to me by saying how you didn't realize how important it was for you to have a support group.
Yeah.
And so what was that support group that you leaned on? What did that look like for people that are out there that feel alone and also feel like, they're trying to make the lifestyle work. And they haven't kind of sunk their teeth in enough yet.
Yeah. So your podcast helped a ton. I feel like the Plan Strong podcast brings in so many varied people. What I really like about your podcast is you've got doctors, you have naturopath doctors, you've got medicinal doctors, you've got researchers. Like, to someone like me, that resonated a lot. I also think it's really nice that you have a ton of people who are either just living life or celebrities. Like, there's a variety of people there. So I think that's really nice from a support standpoint. Also, your Facebook group, the Plant Strong group, that's where I would go. Like, if I had questions, like at one point I was losing a little bit of hair, and I think in retrospect, it was from losing weight so quick. And so I was like, oh God, is this diet related? Is this, weight loss? Like, what is it? So I just posted and I was like, what is this normal? Has anyone experienced this? And so people chimed in and were like, yes, it's normal. And here are some things. And you can look into these supplements if you're worried about it. So that was really helpful. And I think I mentioned in the email, like, we definitely stocked up on your Plant Strong foods, because there's plenty of days where I still want to get takeout, but I shouldn't. So we get like a box of your soup and do the soup instead. So so that's a huge deal. And so basically I've joined a bunch of different groups. Yours are the main ones, but I've joined other ones on Facebook. Like, anything I could find that was whole food, plant-based related, I found. And then on Reddit too. Reddit has a bunch of whole food groups.
Right. Wonderful. Do me a favor. Before we don't go after we say bye, stay on just for a sec. But I want you to know, Heidi, how much I love getting your email. You're very courageous and wonderful to come on the podcast.
Thank you.
And talk about your journey. So thank you so much. And I know that there are a lot of people out there that I think this is going to really resonate with them, and it'll probably give them the strength to either go in a different position on their career path or really embrace the whole food plant-based lifestyle. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Seriously. I appreciate it. It's so bizarre to me that your family is in Ohio and so close to where I grew up. Cause I'm like, how weird. Like, it would have been so nice if my mom had known your dad,
Yeah. Well, hit me with a virtual Plant Strong fist bump on the way out. Ready?
There you go.
Boom.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye. If you're interested in seeing Heidi's art, you can visit HeidiFarinaFineArt.com, or you can visit her Instagram page at Heidi Farina Art. And I'll be sure to put a link in today's show notes to make it super easy for you. Whether you're in the thick of burnout, struggling to find balance, or simply seeking inspiration to prioritize your well-being, Heidi's story is a powerful reminder that it is never too late to start over. From grief and exhaustion to joy, health, and creativity, this episode is a roadmap for the pursuit of happiness and the power of being Plant Strong. Speaking of which, you guys know how this ends. Always keep it Plant Strong. The Plant Strong podcast team includes Carrie Barrett, Lori Kordowich, and Amy Mackey. If you like what you hear, do us a favor and share the show with your friends and loved ones. You can always leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And while you're there, make sure to hit that follow button so that you never miss an episode. As always, this and every episode is dedicated to my parents, Dr. Caldwell B. Esselstyn Jr. and Ann Cryle Esselstyn. Thanks so much for listening.